this is Laura Staley, and I'm back with another video about Excel. The last video I did was on the SUMIF function, which expanded on what I'd covered in the introduction to functions. And today I'm going to do a very similar video on COUNTIF. Now, I covered the three basic count functions in that introduction to functions video, which I will link down below if you want to see it. And those included the count function, the count a function, and the count blank function. So those three functions between them let you count anything in Excel. The first one lets you count numbers. The second one lets you count anything that's not blank, whether it's text or numbers. And the count blank, of course, counts blank cells. Now, you may want to be able to count things in your spreadsheet if they meet certain criteria. And that's what we're going to cover today is the COUNTIF function. And so I will give you various examples of how you might want to use this function. And I hope that you can see some application to it in your spreadsheets. So let's get started. Okay, now this is the data that we are going to use for this video. In the first column are a bunch of colors, and I guess those are the colors of the products that we make. And then in the second column are the number produced. And so there are various things that we're going to count, I guess, as a way of making decisions or finding how much we're actually producing. So the first one that we are going to do is we are going to count these products if we produce more than 10. So I am going to go to the FX button, and generally I recommend that you use the FX button until you get used to a function, and then you may want to start just typing it in from memory. But until you get used to it, this is a good way to do it. So I am going to type in COUNTIF, hit enter. Now notice that there are two functions that it returns. There's COUNTIF, which we're going to use for most of what I'm going to show you. And then there is one example that we're going to use the COUNTIFS function, the COUNTIFS function. So I'm going to go back and click on COUNTIF and click OK. And basically it's going to say, okay, what is the range that I'm looking at and what is the criteria you're looking for? So I'm going to click and drag over the numbers because that is the column that I want to look at, because I want everything that is over 10. Now I do have to include this argument in double quotation marks. So keep that in mind. Even when you are using mathematical operators, it does require double quotation marks. So I am going to click OK. And the count is 4. So we have 4 cells above where we produce more than 10 items. Okay, now we may also want to find the cells above where a certain number appears. And, you know, this isn't very dramatic with this many cells, but if you had a column of numbers, you know, that had dozens or hundreds of numbers in it, it would be a lot more impressive. So let's say that we want to count the number of cells above that have the number 1 in it. So I'm going to go back to my FX button, and since I found COUNTIF already, it's already there, and I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to say, okay, in this range, I want you to find the criteria of 1. And so I don't need double quotation marks because it's a number. And I click OK. And there are 2 iterations above of cells with a number 1 in it. Now, there are sometimes in spreadsheets when you don't want to actually put the number in the formula, you put the number somewhere in the spreadsheet that you're looking for, and then you reference that cell. And this comes in handy when you want to change the criteria you're looking for, and you don't always want to be typing in the formula. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say I'm going to go to the FX button. And again, I'm going to go to COUNTIF and I'm going to identify the range I'm looking in. And in this case, I want to find all of the cells that have the number 1 in it. But instead of typing in 1, I'm going to click the criteria box and then I'm going to click on that cell. So what I'm saying is that in this range, B2 to B13, I want to find whatever number is in cell E1, which in this case is 1. So I'm going to click OK, and again, it gives me a 2. Now, the thing to realize is I could come up here and I could change the number to 6 and hit enter, and it automatically changes the count in this cell to match whatever the latest number is that I have typed in. So this can come in handy when you have a function on your spreadsheet, but you may want to change the result depending on what criteria you're looking for that day. So then you can just stick whatever criteria in a cell somewhere else on your spreadsheet and refer to it. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, sometimes we may want to say, okay, count the number of cells above if it equals this number or that number, or it's that text string or this text string. So in this case, let's say I want to count the number of cells above every time we have either produced 1 item or 6 items. So I'm getting used to my COUNTIF function. So I'm just going to type in equal COUNTIF, open my parenthesis, identify the range by dragging over it. Put in a comma, and then I'm going to type in my criteria, which in this case is 1. And I am going to close the parentheses. Now, I also want to add to that the number of times that we have produced 6 items. So basically, I'm just going to turn this into a formula, type in a space, a plus sign, another space, and then another COUNTIF function. So in this case, I'm going to say COUNTIF, open parenthesis, drag over that range, drag over that range again, put in a comma, and then put in 6, which is the second criterion that I'm looking for. So basically, I have COUNTIF for the first criterion plus COUNTIF for the second criterion, and then I'm going to hit enter, and it gives me the count of 3. Okay, now we may also want to count something is text, and that is fairly simple. So I'm going to say equal COUNTIF, open parenthesis, the range I'm looking for now is this one. So I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to type in. Now, the only difference in this function, this iteration of the function, is I need to enclose text strings in double quotation marks. So I'm going to type in quote, and then green, close quotation marks, and then hit enter. And I didn't close my parentheses, but it does it for me. And in this case, there are 3 items that are green in that first column. Okay, now you could do the exact same thing with text as we just did with the numbers, and you can have 2 COUNTIF functions and say, instead of giving me just green, give me a count of all of the items green or yellow, how many runs we did of those. So I'm going to click on the cell where I want to put it, and then type in equal sign, COUNTIF, open parenthesis, and then say, okay, this is the column that I'm looking for. These are the cells that I am looking in. And then I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to say green, just like I did before. I'm going to close the parenthesis, space plus space, and then I'm going to do it again with yellow. So COUNTIF, open parenthesis, I'm looking in this range, comma, double quotation, yellow. I'm going to close the quotations. Whoops, let me type it in correctly. And then close the parenthesis and hit enter. And that count is 5. Okay, so that makes sense? Now, the 2 examples that I gave you where I counted 2 different criteria were in the same column each. So that structure, COUNTIF plus COUNTIF, only works if the criteria you're looking for are in the same column. But sometimes you want to look for criteria in different columns. And in that case, we use that COUNTIFS, COUNTIFS function that I pointed out at the beginning of this video. So I'm going to go to the FX button and I'm going to type in COUNTIF, hit enter, and that brings up the COUNTIFs. And I'm going to click OK. Now, basically what it does is it says, okay, what's the criteria range number 1? And then what's the criteria? So in this case, I want to find all of the runs of products that were read. And of course, I have to put that in quotation marks. But in this case, I want to count all of those runs that where I produce more than 10 items. Okay, so in that case, the second criteria range is this second column, and the criteria is greater than 10. So I have to put this in double quotation marks as well. So I'm going to type in quote greater than 10. Now I could go on to a criteria number 3 if I wanted to do that, but I don't have that this time. So I'm going to click OK, and the count is 1. So I only had 1. And like I said, if you had more numbers that you couldn't see them all on one screen, this would be a little bit more dramatic. Okay, does that make sense? I'm hoping that as I've been going through these, that you've been thinking about how you might apply some of these to your data and how you might use the count function. And some people, they don't ever need to count things. So yeah, obviously you wouldn't use this much, but sometimes it is really handy to be able to count the items in your spreadsheet that meet criteria. So I hope that you find this useful. Now look for my next video. It will be another video on functions, and I will see you next time. Have a good day.